So when you come to a new water, somewhere you don't know, you've never been before, and have got no idea of the depths or what's in front of you, how do you go about finding out? It's really, really important you know what's on the bottom and how deep it is. Otherwise, you could be casted into water that's far too deep, or conversely, of course, far too shallow. Now, it's really important to find an area that you want to fish on, and an area that you think is right for fishing on. Now, to do that, I've come here today. This is an area I've never fished before. I've got no idea of the depths. So how do we go about finding it? Well, very much like pole fishing, it's all about plumbing the depths and distances, of course. Now, we do that quite simply with a feeder rod and a bomb attached to the end of the line. Now, this particular bomb, as you can see, has got little nodules on it, and all that does is exaggerate what's on the bottom when we drag it across. So you'll feel it down through the braid and down through the rod, but we'll discuss that in a second. Now, quite simply, a bomb on the end of the line, and all we're going to do, we're going to cast this around the peg, and we're going to count how long the bomb takes to get to the bottom. Now, when doing this, get in the habit of A, using the same size bomb, and B, counting in exactly the same way. That way, you'll get the same depths, the same distances, and the same feel for every peg you sit on and every cast you make. So I use a 2-ounce bomb. Lots of people use 1.5 ounces. It doesn't really matter. And likewise, counting. Some people use stopwatches. Some people count themselves. It doesn't matter as long as you're consistent the way you do it. That way, when you cast out, you can count the bomb to the bottom. And you might have a count of 8, for instance, and then you might cast somewhere else and have a count of 6. So straight away, you know there's a difference in depth. So let's have a quick look. As I said, I've never been here before, so where would you start? Well, first and foremost, I'd probably cast to my extreme range and work my way back on a certain line. So I'll cast my bomb out, count it to the bottom, and then I'll wind in maybe 10 turns, cast a bit shorter, count it to the bottom, wind in again, all the way back. Now, if you do that in a fan throughout your peg, you're going to have an idea of the gradient at the bottom. So if we go out to, let's say 80 meters, and I've got a count of 10, wind in 10 turns to 65, 70 meters, and I've got a count of 8, I know straight away that there's a gradient there. Okay, and if you do that in a fan across your peg, you're going to get an idea of what you're fishing on. So let's have a quick chuck. It's a big water today, so we're quite a way out. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 that hit the bottom on. Now, the easiest way to find out what you're fishing on, which is the other really important thing, is with these bombs, let it hit the bottom, tighten up to it, and just gently drag it back across the bottom. And what you tend to find is what's on the bottom will transmit through the braid. I mean, we're using braid. It's super important that you use braid because there's zero stretch in it, and every little rock or little bit of weed you touch, that'll get transmitted through the rod, and you'll understand a bit more about what's on the bottom. Now, this is coming back relatively smoothly, so I would think this is a sort of silty or clay bottom. That's just held up a little bit there. So that could be a small patch of weed. Now, if I'm fishing on rocks or gravel, you'll feel the rod tapping. The bigger the rocks, the bigger the jabs. And if you're on sort of shale or gravel, it'll just rattle as the bomb comes across. And it's really important, depending on what you're fishing for, to find out what's on the bottom. Exactly as you would with a pole. Plumbing your swim in the pole. There's some weed there. So let's take that back to the clip. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. Right, put it back under the clip. So that was quite a long way out. I don't intend fishing that far if I don't have to, but again, this is all about trying to find out what's in front of me, so I can make a decision as to where to fish. So we've come in 15 or so meters there, and we're going to do it again. Exactly the same line as where we cast before. 1, 2, 3. So that's a count of 7. So that we've come in 15 or 20 yards and I've got one count less. So straight away we know there's a slight variation in depth. Now that bomb is skating across the bottom super smooth. So that would lead me to think the bottom is clay or silt, which is quite nice, which is, you know, I'm quite happy to fish over that. But we'll do the same again now. A little bit shorter. Leave your clips on and I'll show you why in a second. So let's wind him in. There we are. So we've come in another sort of 20 meters and we're now in a count of 4. So we know straight away that the bottom we're on is doing that. So that's really, really important when you're gauging where to fish in your peg. Now what I would do is repeat that process in 2 or 3 segments in a fan in my swim, and that'll give you a good idea of the gradient and the depth that you're fishing in. Then you can make a decision on exactly whereabouts in your peg you want to fish. So all we've done, we've sat on the peg. It might take you 10 or 15 minutes, it might take you a bit longer, but don't scrimp on this section. I'd rather start the match late and know what I'm fishing over and in what depth, rather than be chucking into the oblivion and not have a clue what's going on the bottom. It's really, really important for me to know exactly what I'm fishing on. So what we're going to do, we're going to quickly do the same in a fan now across the swim. We're going to find a spot to fish on, and then we'll know exactly what's on the bottom. Nice and simple, but a step not to be missed.